In 1991, scientific instruments detected something extraordinary beneath the Great Sphinx of Giza. Seismic sensors aimed at the monument's base revealed rectangular voids, perfectly shaped chambers hidden beneath the limestone, aligned with geometric precision. The readings were clear, hollow spaces carved with apparent intention, lying beneath one of history's most studied monuments. But the strangest aspect wasn't the discovery itself. It was that someone had already described these chambers 6 decades earlier, a man who claimed to see them not through technology, but through trance. His name was Edgar Cayce. He spoke of a hidden chamber sleeping below the Sphinx, safeguarding memories of a world lost beneath ancient floods. He called it the Hall of Records, a vault built by survivors of catastrophe, containing the true story of humanity's origins. When scientists observed their instruments pulse over the exact coordinates Cayce had described from a trance state 60 years prior, mythology and measurement collided. For skeptics, it was mere coincidence. For others, it represented the first crack in the accepted narrative of human history. But before we explore those hidden chambers, if you find yourself drawn to stories of mystery and forgotten knowledge, please consider subscribing. And if tonight's story resonates with you, a like or comment helps these explorations continue. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1: The Sleeping Prophet. During the early 1930s, a modest man in Virginia would close his eyes, enter a trance state, and begin describing a chamber lost beneath the Sphinx. His voice, transcribed by assistants working by lamplight, detailed a vault located below the monument's right forepaw, built long before Egypt's recorded dynasties began. He provided coordinates specific enough to map, decades before technology existed to peer beneath that ancient stone body. To those around him, it sounded like an echo from another age, part prophecy, part blueprint. The man was Edgar Cayce, known to his followers as the Sleeping Prophet. He never claimed consciousness when his revelations arrived. Instead, he drifted into altered states while his words emerged like transmissions from beyond his own awareness. He spoke of lost continents, of floods and migrations, of civilizations that once harnessed energies forgotten by modern science. But among all his predictions, one returned repeatedly with striking precision. Beneath the Sphinx's right paw lies a hall of records containing humanity's true beginnings, traced back to the people of Atlantis. Night after night, his assistants sat at small desks, converting his murmured words into careful handwriting. Each reading carried fragments of the same geography, coordinates, angles, mentions of entrances guarded by silence and sand. One stenographer later described how her hands trembled as she wrote, not from belief, but from the eerie certainty in Cayce's tone. The man spoke like someone who had been there before. On a map above the desk, they drew the Sphinx's outline and shaded the ground between its paws, labelling it simply with a question mark. For Cayce's followers, the Hall of Records was no ordinary tomb. It was an archive of memory, documenting an epoch when knowledge and myth were unified. He claimed that after Atlantis fell around 12,000 years ago, its survivors established colonies where the Nile meets the desert, rebuilding fragments of their lost science. The massive lion-headed sentinel in his account marked the threshold to their subterranean library, sealed until humanity was ready to use its wisdom once more. His words carried an odd mixture of fatalism and hope. He seemed certain that rediscovery of these records would signal both remembrance and reckoning. Critics, even during his lifetime, dismissed these readings as mystical invention. a psychic predicting coordinates beneath one of the world's most studied monuments sounded like folklore dressed in geographic details. Archaeologists regarded his claims as fringe spirituality wrapped in pseudo-geography. Yet among his stenographers and archivists, small curiosities persisted. Why the Sphinx? Why that exact location? And how had a man with no formal training in geology or Egyptian history pinpointed a spot that would, decades later, draw the attention of scientists with seismic equipment? By mid-century, the archive of his readings, thousands of pages stored by the Association for Research and Enlightenment, became both a curiosity and a seed for future expeditions. Cayce himself had predicted the chamber would be found in the 1990s, a detail that would age from prophecy to potential coincidence. When those years arrived, researchers did indeed sweep ground sensors beneath the Sphinx's forepaw, chasing anomalies that rose from below the sand like faint heartbeats. Most regarded it as a fascinating alignment of storytelling and science, an old prophecy meeting modern instruments. Inside Cayce's small office, the late-night rituals continued even after his death in 1945. Assistants turned his predictions into index cards, stored alphabetically. Atlantis, Egypt, prophecies, Sphinx. They annotated weathered accounts about world floods, keeping careful records of his specific descriptions. During those years, popular fascination with lost civilizations grew rapidly. Articles about ancient mysteries exploded across radio and magazines, blending new technology with ancient enigma. The Sphinx, motionless but ever watchful, became the quiet icon of that movement. The description Cayce offered of its age clashed directly with accepted Egyptology. He dated it to around 10,000 BCE, an era archaeologists viewed as prehistory, long before organized states or formal construction. To professionals, the claim broke both timelines and patience. Yet in his readings, he insisted the monument was older than the pyramids by thousands of years. It was built, he said, by exiles from Atlantis who wanted to leave a signal for those who would forget. That phrasing captured imaginations because it sounded less like grand myth and more like instruction, a relic meant to be activated one day rather than merely admired. By the time seismic teams took interest in the early 1990s, that instruction seemed to echo in unexpected places. Chapter 2. The seismic evidence geophysicist Thomas Debicki, working with geologist Robert Schoch, directed low-frequency waves through the limestone base of the Sphinx to read density changes underground. What bounced back were clear geometric patterns, rectangular cavities beneath the forepaw. Their findings, presented publicly in 1991, noted shapes too regular to be simple cracks or natural voids. Though careful with language, Debicki admitted surprise at how symmetrical the anomaly appeared. Such detail sounded faintly like the outlines Cayce had spoken of 6 decades earlier. The ARE, Cayce's old foundation in Virginia Beach, had supported parts of that research financially. For critics, it blurred uncomfortable boundaries between science and faith. How objective could data be when funded by those inviting prophecy to prove itself? Yet others saw the partnership as poetic symmetry, two worlds meeting halfway, one sending vibrations through stone, the other through trance. Even the scientists privately must have felt the strange tension between their instruments and the history clinging to their sponsors' expectations. Among mainstream Egyptologists, reaction ranged from irritation to unease. Zahi Hawass, who oversaw many excavations around the Sphinx, openly dismissed talk of secret vaults as Western fantasy. He argued that the anomalies could be natural fissures from ancient seismic activity, a mundane explanation shaped like mystery. Still, some reports claim he authorized brief follow-up investigations, possibly to satisfy curiosity, possibly to maintain control over what narrative might form if outsiders continued their search unchecked. The results of those deeper studies were never fully released, ensuring that theories only multiplied in the gaps where information thinned. For Cayce's community, though, the overlap was breathtaking. On the very spot where he'd placed his Hall of Records, the right forepaw, modern sensors located a void roughly 25 feet beneath the surface. Whether chamber, fissure, or coincidence, it was enough to reignite the century-old question: could knowledge survive in stone, waiting for rediscovery? Supporters suggested that the Sphinx might guard a message written not in ink, but in architecture. The Hall of Records, as Cayce described it, contained scrolls chronicling Atlantis' history, its technologies, and the migrations that seeded later cultures. He envisioned humans once capable of channeling forces between physical and spiritual realms, bridging energy in ways forgotten after catastrophe. Many of his words felt half metaphor, half memory. Beneath such phrasing lay a theme that appealed deeply to those alive during turbulent decades. The dream that humanity had once been wiser, more connected, and might one day reunite with that source of understanding. For Egypt's academic community, the claim threatened decades of careful chronology. The 4th Dynasty timeline placed the Sphinx firmly within Pharaoh Khafra's reign, about 2500 BCE. Every temple alignment, every quarry mark supported that range. To admit any significant anomaly, even by geological happenstance, invited endless public speculation. The question refused to stay confined within scientific journals. It leapt to documentaries, talk shows, and late-night radio. Inside our headquarters, archivists watched this unfold with quiet satisfaction. Some had once transcribed the coordinates themselves. The handwriting on those yellowing pages recorded latitude and placement as if they were mundane facts, never imagining they might later mirror a scientist's notation. One can picture them in the 1940s, stacks of carbon paper, lamps burning low, writing phrases that would decades later flicker to life on a seismic graph. Chapter 3: The 19th Century Explorers. Long before radar or satellites could read the ground, travellers moving across the Giza Plateau spoke of tunnels stretching beneath the Sphinx. The place was quieter then, a wide plain of cracked stone and wind-blown grit where the desert swallowed sound as quickly as it gave it. From that stillness they claimed to see openings between the pores, dark recesses half sealed by drifting sand. Some said the air that rose from those gaps was cooler, smelling faintly of damp limestone. It wasn't proof of anything, but it was enough to make them linger. Accounts from the early 19th century describe how explorers like Giovanni Battista Caviglia fought to clear the Sphinx of centuries of encroaching sand. He worked with little more than shovels, ropes, and stubborn curiosity. His workers claimed to hit patches where the sand suddenly fell away, as though slipping into hollows. Caviglia thought he might uncover an entrance, but was forced to abandon his search when the desert began reclaiming the trenches faster than he could clear them. Those brief collapses of sand became stories whispered in salons and later copied into letters that drifted across Europe. By the mid-1800s, others followed. Explorers like Howard Vyse and John Shea Perring brought drilling tools, seeking to find voids inside the Sphinx itself. Much of their effort focused on the statue's rear, where they made a vertical bore that found only compact rock and frustration. Yet as reports spread, entire maps began to appear in journals and sketchbooks, showing dotted lines that trailed away under the monument's paws toward the plateau's heart. The sketches looked like veins, or perhaps the memory of passageways worn down by water long gone. Even when evidence failed to prove anything real, the image of a buried labyrinth refused to fade. Travellers from Napoleon's scientific expedition at the start of the century had recorded similar whispers. Among their papers were notations of small fissures and damp-streaked clefts at the Sphinx's base, and some of their artists drew what they believed to be door outlines under the colossal stone chest, shaded in ink so faint it seemed more suggestion than structure. None could confirm whether those lines led deeper, but the images circulated among antiquarians who took them as inspiration. Before long, the idea of tunnels beneath the Sphinx had become a quiet obsession, shared in coffee houses, libraries and private lectures by men who fancied themselves guardians of buried truth. The fascination was not modern. Long before Europeans arrived with notebooks and spades, Herodotus had written of a labyrinth said to lie beneath Giza, an underworld of chambers that mirrored the heavens. Later chroniclers added fragments to the tale, writing of galleries leading from the Sphinx to the Great Pyramid. To the ancient mind, the desert was not absence but concealment. It preserved rather than erased. So even as centuries passed, the conviction that something intentional lay below the Sphinx never entirely died. Chapter 4: The Water Erosion Mystery. Around the Sphinx's body, the stone ripples like waves frozen mid-motion. The sunlight hits its flanks, sliding over hollows that look more carved by water than by wind. The grooves curl downward in soft, rounded channels, as if millennia ago rain had poured against its sides and left fingerprints in the limestone. It's an odd sight here on the edge of the Sahara, where water is almost a rumour now. That quiet contradiction drew geologist Robert Schoch to Giza in the early 1990s. Trained at Yale, he approached the Sphinx not as an archaeologist, but as someone used to reading the language of stone, examining its enclosure, those tall, uneven walls where the monument's massive body was carved directly from bedrock. He noticed that the patterns on the rock didn't match the desert's typical scars. Instead of crisp horizontal wear shaped by blowing sand, many sections had deep vertical channels and rounded edges, the signature of running water. The clues were subtle, faint curves in a surface that time had already blurred, but they spoke with the calm certainty of geology. Schoch followed those lines down the carved walls, examining datasets and photos taken from every angle. When he cross-checked the patterns with known processes, one conclusion stood out: rain. Not a drizzle, not desert humidity, but long-term saturating rainfall. The kind that reshapes stone. The issue was not whether rain could have done it, but when such rain had last touched this ground. The Sahara, according to climate records, had not seen sustained wet years in several thousand years. The Sphinx, then dated to Pharaoh Khafra around 2500 BCE, should have stood in near total aridity for nearly all its life. Yet the rock looked older, worn by a climate that predated the desert itself. His idea wasn't simple revision, it was an invitation to rethink an entire era. Schoch aligned the clues with paleoclimatic data, showing stretches of heavy rainfall that ended somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 years ago, near the close of the last ice age. If the weathering was truly caused by rain, the Sphinx, or at least the body around which it was carved, might belong to that wetter epoch. Some found the idea thrilling, others found it unsettling. A relic that would have stood centuries before the first kings of Egypt raised stone walls or cut hieroglyphs into slabs. Mainstream Egyptologists were quick to respond. they argued that the same patterns could emerge from more ordinary processes: salt crystallization, groundwater seepage, soft layers eroding faster than hard ones, or simple wear from countless restoration efforts. They pointed to records of the monument being buried and re-excavated over centuries, cycles that could easily produce differential stress in the limestone. They noted that nearby temples used blocks quarried from the same formation, linking both to Khafra's reign, a connection that still stands as the prevailing view. The stone, they said, doesn't need ancient rainstorms to explain its scars. Supporting clues appeared beyond Giza. Schoch compared the Sphinx's enclosure walls with natural formations known to have been weathered by rainfall, rounded cliffs in the southwestern United States, certain ancient outcrops in Africa and the Near East. The resemblance wasn't perfect, but the overall pattern fit. The vertical fluting, the scalloped edges, the absence of sharp angular breakage, all spoke of water movement across soft stone. His photographs lined up next to those of sites shaped by ancient rain, and the reflection was uncanny enough to sustain the theory. Critics countered that water erosion alone couldn't explain everything. The western wall of the Sphinx's enclosure, for instance, showed noticeably less damage than the eastern and southern sides. To them, that uneven wear suggested differences in rock quality or protection during burial, not age. A few pointed out that the monument's core layers vary in hardness, meaning some erode quickly while others resist. Over thousands of years, such variation could mimic the very pattern Schoch described. Still, climate records weigh heavily. Core samples from the Nile Valley and beyond reveal that intense seasonal rain once swept across this region on and off until roughly 5000 BCE. Between 10,000 and 8,000 years before present, much of North Africa was green savanna dotted with lakes. To attribute the Sphinx's features to that humid epoch would mean accepting that colossal architecture, or at least advanced quarrying, existed here long before the dynastic timeline allows. The thought unsettled established chronology, the same way water unsettles dry soil. Chapter 5. The Underground Network. Giza's plateau behaves like a layered machine. Temples above, tunnels below, and something unseen connecting the two through corridors cut into bedrock. In the thin morning haze, the stones still carry traces of salt. The ancient drainage lines gleam when dew gathers, giving the impression of an enormous circuit that once pulsed with motion. Standing at the edge of that complex, it's easy to feel the geometry beneath your feet, even without seeing it. Researchers have long noticed how carefully the site's structures fit together. The Valley Temple, carved directly from the same limestone as the Sphinx, connects through trenches that vanish underneath the lion-bodied guardian. Nearby shafts drop straight down into the ground, some so narrow that only a camera lowered by rope can reach the water below. The most infamous of these is the Osiris shaft, a vertical descent that ends in a half-flooded chamber cut with stone boxes and bridged walkways, discovered beneath the causeway leading to Khafra's pyramid. Its walls are smooth where they should be rough, as though the builders sculpted the rock to imitate a tunnel instead of simply removing stone. Supporters suggest that this shaft isn't a simple tomb, but part of a more extensive network, a skeleton key to Giza's subterranean design. Its alignment points back toward the Sphinx complex, echoing the same engineering logic seen in the drainage lines that run beneath the temples. You might think of it as the maintenance system of a civilization that treated rock like architecture's bloodstream, circulating air, water, or ritual procession. Critics counter that these links are coincidence, the natural outcome of carving temples where limestone strata are already cracked and fractured. To them, the so-called blueprint of tunnels is nothing more than geology dressed up by human imagination. Yet for all the dispute, evidence keeps resurfacing. In summer dig seasons, when rainwater pools along the base of the Sphinx, tiny bubbles rise in patterns that map to known hollows beneath. Archaeologists monitoring the site have observed how water drains faster in areas aligned with underground conduits. The soil behaves peculiarly, collapsing inward along straight seams invisible to the eye. Each time the surface gives way, even just a few centimeters, it sketches a faint diagram across the sand, lines intersecting like rails under decades of drift. When the 1990s seismic scans mapped rectangular voids beneath the Sphinx's forepaw, the data seemed to align with the same underground pattern traced by those shafts. That geometric consistency, right angles, balanced spacing, proportional distances, didn't match natural fissuring. To a geologist, it was curiosity. To a mystic, confirmation. A few reports hinted that one cavity descended along an axis pointing to the Great Pyramid's base, suggesting a corridor carved purposefully beneath both monuments. Official language stayed cautious. Density variations, subsurface inconsistencies. But behind the published words, the concept of a planned subterranean grid began to whisper louder. Chapter 6: Politics and Suppression. When the data reached Cairo, it stopped moving. Boxes of charts and reels were brought into the Ministry of Antiquities just after the morning call to prayer faded over the rooftops. Inside, the corridors breathed a kind of bureaucratic heat. Paper, dust, and the faint scent of limestone clinging to field equipment. A clerk logged the arrival, stamped the import forms, and carried the documents through an unmarked door. By evening, the paper trail had already begun to vanish. The survey team who delivered their findings never received a receipt, only an assurance that a review would happen very soon. In 1993, Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities held every excavator's future between its signature lines. Under Zai Hawass, the office controlled not just digging rights, but also data release and film permissions. The seismic readings from the base of the Sphinx arrived with academic endorsements attached, yet still carried a faint odour of controversy from their American sponsors. The files included cross-sectional maps showing geometric voids beneath the forepaw, each labelled cautiously as potential low-density anomalies. Getting them cleared meant getting each label blessed by committee seals. Weeks went by without word, then months. Some accounts speak of an internal memo circulating, instructing that no reports concerning chambers or tunnels are to be released without central approval. Heritage protection was the official reason. Security perhaps another. The geologists, used to open sharing of seismic records, found themselves caught in a different logic entirely, a world where geological data could be treated like state secrets. The Sphinx, after all, wasn't a hill or a cavern. It was a national symbol, and national symbols could not be tampered with lightly. An American researcher spent a week waiting for signatures that never came. Each day he sat in a courtyard that smelled faintly of diesel and hibiscus, his iron shirt growing salt rings in the noon glare. The reels inside his briefcase carried echoes from the plateau, reflections of pulses fired deep into the bedrock only weeks earlier. On each reel, a thin strip of magnetic tape hummed softly in its metal casing, holding what might have been the most detailed underground portrait of the Sphinx ever recorded. Yet each morning, the guard at the gate told him, "Not today." Inside that same compound, decisions were being shaped by competing pressures. Egypt's archaeological authority had always walked the line between scholarship and politics, weighing foreign access against nationalist stewardship. Hawass at that time, both gatekeeper and showman, publicly championed Egypt's narrative of continuity, pharaohs to nationhood, sand to sovereignty. To him, a rumour of secret vaults built before Egypt's own dynasties wasn't just bad science, it risked becoming bad diplomacy. When journalists called for comment, his official reply was simple: no chambers confirmed. Yet among researchers, another phrase began to circulate: unexplained subsurface features. According to a few who saw early summaries, portions of the seismic data hinted at rectangular echoes too sharp to be dismissed as faults. The leaked abstracts described zones of symmetry oriented exactly beneath the front left paw, extending toward the body's center line. Their depth matched the predicted location of the so-called Hall of Records from Cayce's trance readings decades earlier. A coincidence nearly impossible to ignore. If nature made those shapes, she had done so with a suspicious sense of geometry. Still, without excavation rights, evidence could go no further. Subsequent proposals referencing localized hollow structures were swiftly rejected for endangering the Sphinx's foundation. Publicly, Hawass maintained that nothing unusual rested beneath the monument. Privately, he may have been less certain. Some archives mention a brief midnight inspection with a radar unit borrowed from the military. Afterward, permits for all foreign-led surveys were suspended. The record falls silent there, leaving only the question of what the radar had seen or hadn't. Chapter 7: The Global Guardians. Across the world stand other watchers, lion-bodied beings guarding temples and gates to forgotten knowledge. Their shadows stretch into realms both physical and mythological. In Mesopotamia, pairs of winged lamassu guarded Assyrian palace gates, colossal and calm beneath arches now collapsed. Thousands of miles east in the temple corridors of southern India, the deity Narasimha, half lion, half man, still bears teeth of both mercy and fury. And beyond oceans, in the highlands of Mesoamerica, granite guardians stand half buried near ruined plazas, their feline mouths curved in the same restrained snarl. The resemblance is not perfect, yet the echo refuses to disappear. Archaeologists categorize these figures as independent archetypes, local myths solving local anxieties about protection, power, and divinity. Still, the mind tugs toward connection, as if the same blueprint had drifted like smoke across ages and continents. Some whisper that such images might record fragments of an older memory, shared before migration scattered our ancestors. Critics counter that human imagination recycles certain forms because fear and worship look similar everywhere. Still, when the pattern reappears in stones separated by oceans, one feels an old language hiding beneath measurement. Many of these watchers point skyward, or rather, they watch along an invisible celestial path. The Great Sphinx aligns near the rising point of the constellation Leo during certain epochs, a detail not easily dismissed as coincidence. Across the ancient world, temples face sacred stars. In Babylonia, the lamassu stood beneath constellations regarded as gates. In the ruins at Angkor, lion sentinels bracketed stairways that align with solstice dawns. Even in pre-Columbian sites across the Americas, depictions of jaguar gods appear linked with solar cycles, eyes set to the east, awaiting light's first return. Supporters suggest this pattern hints at an architectural conversation across time, each builder hearing a faint instruction that others once obeyed. Chapter 8: The Spectrum of Belief. Across decades of whispered conjecture, the spectrum of belief stretches wide. At one end are those who see a library sealed by a vanished race, a memory bank from a time when the stars supposedly guided cities and the Earth knew different physics. They speak of crystalline drives, metallic codices, and machinery sleeping beneath millennia of pressure. At the other end stand geologists who shrug and call it simple geology. Natural fissures widened by ancient groundwater and later buried by shifting dunes. Between those poles lie endless shades of maybe formed by rumour, misread data, and the lingering desire that something hidden might validate every myth we ever told ourselves. Supporters suggest that under the Sphinx lies testimony from a world blanketed by flood, a civilization that glimpsed extinction and tried to pass on instructions for rebuilding. Others dismiss such talk as the human reflex to fill any void with meaning. Still, the debate endures because no one is truly certain what the instruments found, and few agree on who should be allowed to look again. Without access, absence turns into evidence of its own kind. What we can't measure, we invent. Each new theory doesn't replace the old. It layers over it, like bands of sediment building a new landscape of half-remembered possibility. The question that surfaces most often is no longer what's there, but why can't we let it go? It's strange how the idea of a buried vault haunts not through proof, but through refusal. Refusal of time to seal itself. Refusal of humans to accept that some doors might open only inward. A camera probe, a ground-penetrating signal. Each technological advance is greeted not with closure but with renewed ambiguity. The data hums, the instruments blink, and we project whole civilizations into pixels that never form a clear image. The missing piece becomes the story, not the silence around it. Conclusion. The eternal question. The sands do not speak, yet across millennia they hold their pose, soft against the pores of the Sphinx, unbroken through conquest, weather, and excavation. Beneath that immense stillness lies more than geology or craftsmanship. It holds a question about memory itself, whether humanity has forgotten its own beginning and built this riddle in stone as a mirror to recall it. The Sphinx seems less like a monument and more like a pause carved into the desert, a breath caught between creation and recognition. Each grain of sand that drifts across its face feels like a syllable in a sentence no one can fully read. Standing before it, you understand how easily curiosity turns into reverence. The monument stares east, not toward a god, but toward recurrence, the renewal of dawn. Some whisper that this gaze is more than symbolic, that it aligns history like a calendar of stone, and that under its forepaw lies the record of a time before recorded speech. Whether it guards air, water channels, or relics of a civilization the sea erased, the Sphinx does what all guardians do. It waits until humanity is ready to ask correctly. The waiting itself becomes its message. Truth has never been steady here. Every attempt to define the Sphinx has produced a contradiction. Sacred guardian, weathered idol, relic of lost science, architectural accident. Over centuries, priests, emperors, surveyors, and scientists have each found their reflection in its face. Perhaps that is what it was meant to hold, a catalogue not of ancient tools, but of human interpretation. Its power may come from this uncertainty, the way it invites imagination to occupy the gaps archaeology leaves. Some researchers say the most enduring mysteries are built not to deceive, but to preserve the act of wondering. If the buried voids ever open, what story would they tell? Supporters suggest a codex of forgotten technology or maps to an earlier Earth. Skeptics see the echo of erosion, nothing more. Yet both sides circle the same realization. Seeking the answer has already altered our view of human origins. The hypothesis, the tests, the disputes, all of it now belongs to the Sphinx's narrative as much as the limestone itself. To stand before it is to sense that discovery may not be the goal but the ritual. Verification would end the dreaming. Uncertainty allows the mind to travel. Night settles over Giza, and the air cools until the desert seems to exhale. The Sphinx, half in shadow, still watches the horizon that first inspired its builders. A traveller might hear the wind brushing through fissures at its base, like breath through an ancient instrument. Those faint tones may be nothing but air against porosity, or a language humanity has not yet learned to translate. The truth, perhaps, is that the monument guards not a chamber, but the impulse to keep listening. Somewhere beneath the weight of ages, the desert keeps whispering its unfinished sentence to anyone who pauses long enough to hear. Where are you listening from tonight? And what do you believe lies beneath the gaze of the eternal guardian? Share your thoughts below, and may your own search for hidden knowledge continue.